All right, Dad. Did you go to university or college? How did you decide what you wanted to study? We talked about this a little bit last week.
Yeah, I did go to Iowa State. Well, when I first started, it was called Iowa State College. But by the time I graduated, it was Iowa State University.
Hmm.
And I guess maybe it was the closest state university. Plus, one of my classmates was going to go there, and he had a brother that was already there. So
Mm-hmm.
that made a little bit of difference, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Did you serve in the military? What did you do, and what kind of experience was it?
Well, back in the day, I graduated from college in, I did in the fall quarter in 59 and in 60. So when I got out in 60, I didn't really have a job. And back in those days, they had the draft. And while you're in college, you had a deferment to go to school. So you were up. So I enlisted in the Army in December of 60. And they had a program where you could enlist before Christmas and then sign up, and then you kind of had 2 weeks off, and then you'd go about the 1st of January.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into the army, enlisted in the Army, and about the 1st of January went to Fort Riley, Kansas. And I was there for about, January, February, part of March. I got let out because of my vision, night vision mainly. And so it was a good experience. One thing happened when I first arrived there. They took my picture as I was stepping off the bus at night. I don't know, process through. Well, the next morning they come around with my picture and say, They wonder where's this guy at? And they said, oh, he's over there. So they got me and they dressed me up in my dress uniforms and classified me as the #1 recruit at that new induction center. They just remodeled it there at Fort Riley, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
So I was probably the first one through and the first one out, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed my experience, but that was the 3 months, 2 or 3 months was about enough of it for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said they noticed when they went out on like a night mission.
Yeah, they did it. They did, I think, a special thing. I don't remember saying too much about vision, night vision, but to check your hearing and stuff. So they took us out at night and did some things. I don't remember testing your vision though,
Mm-hmm.
but they could just tell, that I couldn't see well in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
But they test your hearing and stuff like that at night.
Mm-hmm.
So then after that, they processed me out.
Yeah. And you went back to your parents.
Right, went back there. I had one of my high school classmates was going to get married in that April of 61, and he'd asked me to be the best man, and I told him, well, I was going to go in the Army. I didn't know, but turned out I got out in time to be the best man at his wedding in April.
Uh-huh.
And just
Who is that?
Richard Capps. And so they got married on the 16th of April of 61
Mm-hmm.
in Newton, Iowa. Then I think I worked, if I remember, worked on a farm that summer. And the next summer, I joined the Peace Corps
Mm-hmm.
and went to University of Oklahoma at Norman for about most July and August of that year. The group was going to go to Brazil, but they didn't let me go there either. So I came back. I got out, I think in September sometime. Looked around Des Moines for a job a little bit, then I took a test. It was called the Federal Entrance Exam, FSEE, something I think President Kennedy or that administration started. They said to help, improve the federal employees, you had to have a bachelor's degree, and then they'd give you a test. If you passed that test, then they put you on this register, which covered a lot of different government agencies. But it wasn't until about 10 months later, in August of 63, that I got an inquiry from here in St. Louis from Department of the Army. It was the Engineer Supply Control Office. They handled engineer type equipment for the Army.
Mm-hmm.
So I came down for an interview, and a couple of weeks later came down for the job, and have been here ever since. I worked for the Department of the Army for about 9 years, and my vision got to where I retired with a disability in 1972.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, back to the Peace Corps training. What was that like? Was it like physical training?
Well, they had physical training, but it was a lot of classroom. Like in Brazil, you're supposed to learn some Portuguese and learn about the culture and stuff like that. Besides, they did have physical training, but just to keep you in health, I guess.
And you went there, you didn't know anyone when you got there?
At Peace Corps?
Yeah.
No. They came from everywhere. They had all kinds of young, old, married, and single.
Yeah. Did you think that maybe they wouldn't put you in because of your vision, or were you surprised?
I don't know. And I don't know if I ever really knew why I didn't go.
Uh-huh.
Just that you weren't selected.
Oh, okay. Huh.
Then I came back home. Well, after the Peace Corps, yeah. Then I worked on a farm that summer while I was waiting to hear from something from that FSEE exam.
Mm-hmm. Now, when did Uncle Floyd get married? Was he still at your parents there, or was he already married?
I think he got married. Let's see. He probably he was married because he had Michael, their first son, was born in 58, so he was married.
Oh, okay.
And probably 50. I assume he got married in 57, maybe 57. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
56 or 57, I guess. Max was still home, I guess, and Rosemary.
Mm-hmm. What was your first job? What did you like and not like about it?
First job? You mean first permanent job?
Yeah, maybe first job after. Maybe your job in St. Louis.
Yeah, that might have been my first job. I'd worked summers on the farm and stuff before that, but you'd say that would be my first job. I worked for the Department of the Army, like I say, Engineer Supply Control Office, ESCO in St. Louis. And they handled all the engineering equipment for the Army. So I was an item manager, so you would be assigned certain items and you would manage them. We did the Army material study, a 5-year program, see how many you had to buy, how many you'd repair to keep the Army supplied with that particular equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked it. And it was just the starting of the computer age. I guess we had, back in the early 60s, back in the key punch days, you had to use these key punch cards that's how you put your data into the computer.
Mm-hmm.
It was a key punch card.
Huh.
So that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And like most jobs, at first when I was there, we had these Army depots all over the United States, and if you had a piece of equipment being repaired there, you could call maybe the maintenance shop or whatever and check on the status. But later, they wouldn't let you do that. You just had to wait for a computer report on the status of everything and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Were there a lot of people who did your job, or is it just 1 or 2 people? Or?
No, it's quite a bunch, because we had everything from cataloging section to maintenance to procurement. Like I was I had a managing part, so there was quite a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the total employee there was, but pretty good sized outfit.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, we were in a couple of buildings when I first came to St. Louis. We were in the Federal Bank building there on North Broadway, and we had a cataloging division over on Spruce Street,
Mm-hmm.
and they had the map called a map material aid to foreign countries map or sales.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my items, they had sold a logging equipment unit to Venezuela. It was a sale, so they paid for it, but the problem was that they had changed the military specs and had never made a procurement on it, so we didn't really have any in inventory, so we had to cobble one up.
Mm-hmm.
Actually turned out buying a commercial trailer, the bolster, and the truck we modified over in Granite City Army Depot. I went over there a couple of times while they were doing that
Mm-hmm.
to get that shipped off.
Yeah.
It was late because of that.
Mm-hmm. Do you have to dress in like business wear?
Well, yeah, back in those days, white collar, we wore a shirt and tie.
Mm-hmm.
Except one or two summers, we moved from downtown St. Louis to out on Goodfellow. 4300 Goodfellow was the old small arms plant
Mm-hmm.
during World War II, and they just took the machines out of there and moved us in. There was no air conditioning for at least one summer, maybe part of another one, so we didn't have to wear ties then.
Mm-hmm.
Wore more casual clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought a fan from home and put it under my desk.
Yeah.
Finally, then in a couple of years, they installed whole bunch of those large window air conditionings because that was a big place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when you said when you interviewed for this job, you were only in St. Louis like 12 hours or something.
Right. Yeah, I brought a bus from Iowa down to St. Louis, and I'd never been in St. Louis, and I think I left Des Moines about noon and got here in St. Louis at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually near the bus stop, there's some hotels. So I got my suitcase, walked around, and there was one hotel I didn't pretty like the looks of it, but like it wasn't the best place, but couldn't find anything else, so I finally spent the night there in 1963, like I say, and I think it was less than $3, like two something the night.
Mm-hmm.
Spent a night, and of course I had the letter where I was going to have my interview, so I went down the next morning. Went down and I asked the guy at the clerk at the desk and where this was, because I thought I might have to take a taxi cab because I didn't know anything about St. Louis, but he said, "Oh, here." He said, "We took me to the door, and just about a half a block away, across the intersection, it was Boatman's Bank building. That's where I had my interview." So I walked over there, had my interview with the personnel, and then he took me over to the, where I eventually went to work, a block away or something, and back. And I got back to my hotel and checked out and caught the noon bus back to Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Then a couple of weeks later, when I came down for the job, I brought the bus down, and I just planned to spend a week in a hotel because I didn't know anything about St. Louis. And then the next weekend, I'd look for a job and
An apartment.
an apartment. Yeah, sorry. And so I stayed in the Belcher Hotel. It was probably a little bit better, but it was only about a block from work.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I came on a Sunday, so I went to work on Monday. I spent that first week in that hotel and just walked to work then.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the Saturday morning, I went out on the street, going to look for an apartment. And there was this man came up and he said, "Hey, what are you doing today?" And he was a taxi cab driver. And I mentioned looking for an apartment. He said, hey, I'll turn off my meter. And we'll go look apartment looking. You just pay me whatever you want to pay me. So we got a newspaper and went apartment looking.
Mm-hmm.
And I found an apartment. It was a furnished apartment. It wasn't the best. It was hard, kept not making any decision for the first week. I thought, well, I'll take this apartment. And while I'm living there, you didn't sign a lease or nothing, that I can look for a place. And so that's what I did. And it was on a bus line. It was on Gibson, 4220 Gibson, which was near Manchester and Gibson. And there was a bus there that I could catch downtown, got me to within a few blocks of work.
Mm-hmm.
So on the weekends, maybe I'd look around little apartment, but it wasn't until, I'd moved in there in September of 63. It wasn't until April of 64 I found another apartment, another efficiency furnished on Waterman, 5666 Waterman in the West End.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived there for about 7 years.
Yeah, was that still on a bus line? Because that seems...
Yeah, that was on a bus line too. That was on the Lindell bus line. Took me downtown, even closer to work, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then after we moved to Goodfellow Boulevard to work, I caught a bus at the same corner that Waterman and DeBoliver. It just going the other direction. It went up to, it was called the Cross County or something like that. It went up Goodfellow to where I worked. So caught it when I moved. When the work moved, I caught my bus at the same corner, just going a different direction.
Yeah, and Ken and Sarah both had apartments near there. Did you guys make those decisions together, or that just worked out that way?
Yeah, it just worked out that way because I didn't know either Ken or Senator Winter, when they came to work, I think, in probably, I don't know, maybe 65, or I didn't really know him until 66, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And matter of fact, Kendall had lived on Waterman, the next building next to me, but I didn't know him at the time. He moved before I got to know him at work.
Oh. And
Sarah Lee, at the time, she lived on the other side of the street of Waterman.
Mm-hmm.
And once in a while, we would ride the same bus when we worked out on Goodfellow.
Mm-hmm. What did those first few years, did you have friends that you hung out with on the weekends and stuff, or?
Well, it's always said, it's kind of when you look back over your life, how it was all kind of orchestrated. I thought, well, the neighborhood I moved into first and the first church I went to and all those things just kind of dictate some of your life. Like on Gibson, I moved to Gibson. Well, I was looking for a church to go to on Sunday, and I went up, there was St. Peter's Lutheran Church. I remember a Lutheran church in Greenfield, Iowa. And so I went to a Lutheran church, and there was a young man came there, and he invited me to this singles group that met at a Presbyterian church just off Skinker Memorial Presbyterian Church, where I eventually met Marion, my wife. So I think, well, the neighborhood you moved into, that dictated what church I went to, and I met that guy, and think all those things that work together.
Mm-hmm.
Just by one event kind of dictates the rest of your events, or even come to St. Louis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did you meet your spouse, and what did you like about her?
I think I met Marion. I think I met her. Maybe I remember one time that group in maybe 1967 at a progressive dinner. I think I met her. But then she quit coming to that group. That was that singles group that met at Memorial Presbyterian Church. We met on Sunday nights, and it was a pretty active group, pretty big group. They even had different groups, and we'd have about once a month have a social event besides the Sunday night thing. And they had a progressive dinner. I think I met her there. But then she quit coming, and it wasn't until 1975 she came back, and it was on a night that they actually didn't have a meeting. But there was a few of us. I remember myself and Herman Kornstubel, and were there. And we didn't know they'd canceled the meeting for some reason. I remember why. But Jan Wilkinson Marion came into the meeting, and I knew Jan, but I said something like, well, who you got there with you? And it was Marion, and I don't know. Just after that, we kind of got together and started doing things together as a group, and then eventually, in '76, started a date.
You like a group like you and Jan Wilkinson
Right.
and Mom?
But yeah, I remember we went to a movie. Besides, we went to a movie, that Crossing the Switchblade movie. Went to that. And then I think I went to Iowa to my parents in April of '76, and I had Marion pick me up at the airport. Maybe I don't know, with our first date, we went to the Shriner Circus. It was down in Busch Stadium in June. I don't know if they call that our first date.
Mm-hmm.
Then we started going together.
June of '76.
June of '76, probably that maybe the first date. Then I for her 36th birthday on July the 16th, we kind of a special one. I bought her a corsage and took her down to they had a revolving restaurant downtown, and went over under the arch, and that's when I first told her that I loved her. And then in September, Labor Day, we both went to Iowa so she could meet my family in Iowa.
Mm-hmm. You stayed with your parents at
Yeah,
the house?
Right. And they liked her. They said she fit right into the family. And so then in October, for my birthday, I gave her engagement ring to her.
Mm-hmm.
I said I'd give myself a birthday present.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got married on May the 14th of '77.
Mm-hmm. Did you help plan the wedding very much, or did Mom mostly do it?
Yeah, she pretty well did it.
Yeah.
We actually had, I think, somebody from the church kind of was a wedding planner. So as far as a lot of that stuff, she did that. She got the photographer and the singer and stuff like that.
Well, what did you like about Mom? What did you notice that you liked about her that you wanted to?
I don't know. It's a good question. You say, well, it's hard. It's hard to tell. You just connect with people. Certain people, you connect with and get along with or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we just did well together, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. Because you didn't really date anyone else seriously before then, did you?
Not really, huh? Not seriously, I guess you would say. I never had somebody I was interested in, like, getting married or whatever, or trying to pursue somebody.
Mm-hmm.
There was a girl that lived on Waterman across the street that we would go bowling and go to some movies and stuff, but she wanted everything she did she had to gamble. Like, we'd go bowling, we'd have to bet on every game, and or play cards. She wanted money on the playing cards.
Oh yeah.
She was a key punch. I think she worked for the city police department somehow.
Huh. What was your wedding like?
Well, we got married at her church, her and her brother's church in Florissant, Parker Road. I think it's a Baptist church. I'm trying to remember exactly the name of it. They had school there too. So we had a wedding of I think there were 100 and some guests there. A Saturday afternoon wedding, and May the 14th, it wasn't too hot, but the air conditioner of the church at least part of it broke down. And the guy that was supposed to do the tape recording of the weddings forgot it, and was they had to finally call him, and he was still in bed. So our wedding was delayed about an hour or so.
Who was your best man?
Best man was Kendall Winter. I was the best man at their wedding, Ken and Sarah's wedding, and he was the best man at mine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we spent the wedding night here in St. Louis, and then we headed for the southeast. We spent the next night in Henderson, Kentucky, and then 2 nights at Cumberland Falls State Park in Kentucky. They have had a lodge there. We spent 2 nights there. They have I think it might be the biggest waterfall other than the Niagara Falls. They also have supposed to have a moon bow there. I think you can see it. And then we went down to Gatlinburg to the Great Smoky Mountains. Spent about four days there in a cottage. Then headed up the Blue Ridge Park Ridge and then back to St. Louis. We were gone almost 2 weeks. And then we went to Iowa to have a little get together up there.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you'd call it, wedding shower or something.
Your parents came to the wedding,
Yeah.
didn't they?
Right.
Did Uncle Max or
No,
Uncle
nobody.
Fred?
My parents and Sister Rosemary and her friend Glenna. I think those are the only one from Iowa that came to the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
They flew down and flew back, I think.
Oh, okay. What makes mom special or unique?
Well, mainly I always said she had a quiet spirit. She was always pretty calm and collected.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the main thing I would say.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's a good stopping point for today.
All right.
Questions.
Okay.
Until next time.